Kim Jong-un decided to teach his enemies a lesson. And then...
Kim Jong-un watched as North Korea's newest warship was crushed in a catastrophic launch.
North Korea was left exposed and humiliated in front of the world. What made it even more embarrassing was Kim's confidence, because the warship, meant to showcase North Korea's strength, started sinking right in front of him. It became a laughingstock to almost everyone, except for the few who dug deeper and found the chilling reality of how scary North Korea is truly becoming for the world. Or should I say, someone helping it become what it is.
It would be impossible for North Korea to build a ship this quickly without outside assistance.
Mike Plunkett is a naval analyst with defense intelligence company Janes.
So how did North Korea embarrass itself? And how did it expose the scary side of it? Now, before we begin, bombard this video with so many likes that it lands in Kim Jong-un's feed, so he can watch a detailed analysis of his embarrassment. On May 21st, 2025, North Korea prepared for what was supposed to be a proud and powerful moment. At the Chungcheon shipyard, surrounded by military leaders and shipbuilders, the country was ready to launch one of its most ambitious naval projects to date, the Kangkon, a 5,000-ton destroyer belonging to the newly developed Chaehon class. This wasn't just any regular vessel. It was meant to be a symbol of North Korea's growing military strength. Equipped with advanced radar systems, missile launch capabilities, and a modern hull design, the Kangkon represented a major leap from the outdated Soviet-era ships the North Korean Navy had been relying on for decades. It was one of the largest and most advanced ships ever built in North Korea, and the message was clear. They were aiming to modernize their navy and showcase their technological progress to the world. The launch was meant to be smooth and dramatic. Like any traditional ship launch, the vessel was positioned on a slipway, ready to slide down into the water. In theory, gravity and carefully controlled mechanisms would guide the ship into the harbor. Kim Jong-un himself had arrived to witness the moment, standing front and center as cameras rolled and officials stood at attention. Everything was set, but what followed was nothing short of a disaster. As the launch began, the ship's stern, which is the back end, slid downward as expected, but the bow, which is the front end, didn't move. Something was off. Instead of smoothly gliding into the water, the Kangkon started to tilt awkwardly. The stern dipped heavily into the sea, while the bow remained stuck on land. Then, in front of everyone, the entire vessel rolled over onto one side. In seconds, the massive destroyer was on its side, partially submerged, stuck between land and sea, its hull scraped and its structure visibly damaged. And all of this happened with North Korea's supreme leader standing just meters away. Anyways, good luck to the officers that were in charge. Kim Jong-un's reaction was immediate and intense. Witnesses reported that he looked visibly shocked and furious. State media, which rarely admits mistakes, later quoted him, calling the incident a criminal act caused by absolute carelessness. In a country where public criticism is almost unheard of, the statement was a major deal. It suggested that someone, or many people, were about to pay the price for the embarrassment. Soon after the launch failed, satellite images began to circulate. For a regime that thrives on secrecy and control, this was a major problem. North Korea could not cover this up. The world had already seen it. The narrative was out before North Korea could even react. In fact, for several days after the incident, state media went completely silent. No photos, no headlines, no explanations. It was the kind of pause that speaks louder than words. Behind the scenes, though, reports suggest that massive cleanup operations had already begun. Military personnel surrounded the shipyard, workers rushed in, and efforts were made to recover and possibly salvage the ship. But the damage was already done, not just to the ship, but to North Korea's image. A country that prides itself on perfection and discipline had just made an obvious and public mistake. And with the world watching, the pressure to fix it, or at least make it look like it was fixed, had just begun. Most people just made fun of this and moved on, but the only ones who noticed the bigger picture realized how scary North Korea is becoming for the world. To understand how a single warship launch exposed its power, you have to look at North Korea's broader naval capabilities. The country controls over 2,500 kilometers, or 1,560 miles, of coastline, divided between its east and west coasts. And along those waters, it operates one of the largest submarine fleets in the world, estimated between 64 and 86 subs. That includes around 40 Sang-O-class coastal submarines, about 20 Romero-class diesel subs, and a mix of Yugo and Yono mini-subs built for stealth, infiltration, and espionage. On paper, it's a massive underwater fleet. But in reality, most of these submarines are outdated, noisy, and struggle to operate for long durations. Still, what they lack in sophistication, they make up for in surprise. In an incident in 2015, North Korea has, at times, deployed 70%, or around 50 vessels of its submarine force, without being detected. Kim Jong-un decided to make this even more deadly. he has given a serious push to modernize the fleet. Instead of just relying on old mini-subs, North Korea has been investing in ballistic missile submarines like the Gorae-class, Sinpo-C, and Hero Kim Kun-ok, capable of launching submarine-launched ballistic missiles like the Pokgoksong series. You heard that right, ballistic missiles. They allow North Korea to threaten targets across Japan and South Korea from beneath the sea. Even if their endurance is limited due to diesel engines, their presence alone forces enemies to rethink their defenses. Beyond submarines, the surface fleet includes around 470 vessels, mostly small, fast attack boats, patrol ships, and corvettes. It's not designed for blue water warfare, but for coastal defense, quick raids, and, if needed, disruption of trade routes or blockades. In recent years, Pyongyang has showcased new nuclear-capable underwater drones, modern missile corvettes, and upgraded older ships to carry cruise and ballistic missiles, the steps that suggest a growing focus on naval deterrence. For North Korea, building naval power is about more than defending its shores. Ships and submarines, even outdated ones, create unpredictability. They give North Korea the ability to strike unexpectedly. In a regime built on projection and survival, even a half-functional submarine can become a powerful deterrent. Now, the event of the capsized Kengkon might seem like a one-off technical failure, but if you look closer, you'll see North Korea has quietly amassed serious power on paper. A rise that isn't accidental, but rather backed, quietly and strategically, by a powerful player in the shadows.
Certain elements in the design of North Korea's new warships indicate a high level of Russian involvement, especially when compared to Russia's own Grigorovich-class frigates.
The stern here, they have the same basic squared-off shape in both classes. The profile of the foredeck and the bow is the same or very similar on both.
Images of the Chaehyang destroyer launched in April also bear a strong resemblance to the Russian warship.
Yes, it's a quiet but growing military partnership between North Korea and Russia. When the regime suddenly revealed sleek, modern-looking destroyers that resembled high-end Russian warships, analysts took notice. Some even pointed out weird similarities to Russia's Admiral Grigorovich-class frigates, from the squared stern and hull profile to very specific design features like the distinctive chine line and steep bow rake. These aren't just surface-level similarities. They hint at something deeper than direct technical input. Experts like Catherine Dill have pointed out that when isolated countries rapidly upgrade their military tech, it usually means someone's helping them behind the scenes. And in this case, all signs point to Russia. This collaboration is going to give an insane edge to North Korea. North Korea simply doesn't have the shipbuilding capacity to roll out advanced warships so quickly. Even China, with its massive military-industrial complex, takes over a year to build a destroyer. Because warships, especially destroyers and battleships, aren't just big chunks of metal. They're incredibly complex machines. Building one involves thousands of components, from high-strength hull plating and advanced radar systems to weapons, propulsion, and electronics. Each system has to be carefully designed, manufactured, integrated, and tested. Just sourcing the specialized steel and armor-grade materials can take months. Then there's the labor. Even in countries with huge industrial bases like the US or Japan, building a large warship usually takes 3 or 4 years under normal conditions. For example, it typically takes Japan and South Korea about 3 years to build a frigate or destroyer. Europe takes 3 to 6 years, and the US often longer. In fact, even decades ago, building warships was an intense task. In the 1930s and 1940s, it took nearly 3 years to build Germany's Bismarck, and over 4 years for Japan's Yamato, which is one of the heaviest battleships ever built. Even the US, known for its wartime efficiency, took an average of 2.5 to 3 years to build a single battleship during World War II. And that was with around-the-clock work, experienced shipyards, and massive resources. So, for North Korea, with limited resources, fewer skilled shipbuilders, and outdated infrastructure, launching 2 advanced-looking warships in just 400 days raises a massive red flag. Either the ships are nowhere near as capable as they appear, or someone else is helping them do it. And in this case, it's obviously Russia. And it's not just the designs. There are signs of Russian hardware on board as well. Analysts spotted the Pantsir-M short-range anti-missile systems on the ships, which is a system that Russia has never exported to anyone. This kind of transfer isn't casual. According to defense experts like Keir Giles, Moscow only shares this kind of tech with countries it wants to deeply bind itself to. So North Korea must be having a great time, right? Well, the reality is far different than what you think. A wise man once said, "There are no permanent enemies and no permanent friends, only permanent interests." So what's in it for Russia? You see, ever since the war in Ukraine and rising sanctions, Russia has been looking for partnerships to help it work around global restrictions. And North Korea fits the bill perfectly. And for Kim Jong-un, it's a win-win. He gets advanced tech, and Russia gets its loyal partner in East Asia. Kim's 2023 visit to Russia's Pacific Fleet base now looks far more significant in hindsight. What was publicly called a goodwill tour may have actually been a behind-the-scenes pitch, a trade deal involving naval tech in exchange for weapons, diplomatic backing, or even natural resources. According to multiple intelligence reports, Russia is now pouring cash into the deployment of thousands of North Korean soldiers to help fuel its war in Ukraine. Ukrainian officials claim that at least 11,000 North Korean troops have already been sent to the front lines in areas like Kursk, and that number could rise to 15,000 with constant troop rotations. In fact, sources claim that we could be looking at up to 100,000 North Korean soldiers deployed in Russia within a year. The payments are significant. Russia is estimated to be paying around $2,000 per soldier each month. That's over $22 million for 11,000 troops, and it could snowball fast. But here's the catch. Analysts say most of that money may never reach the soldiers. In North Korea, where the average monthly salary is less than $1, it's likely that Kim Jong-un and his inner circle are the ones pocketing most of the earnings. For Putin, this partnership solves two major problems. It relieves pressure on its own population by outsourcing manpower, and it helps keep up the pace of his invasion despite diminishing Russian munitions and mounting casualties. North Korean support began back in late 2022 with shipments of artillery shells. And over time, that expanded into ballistic missiles. Now it's boots on the ground, some reportedly from elite, highly indoctrinated units. Ukrainian troops have even claimed that these soldiers are ordered to kill themselves rather than be captured. For North Korea, the reward isn't just cash. The real value lies in access to Russian military expertise. In return for its support, Pyongyang is believed to be receiving advanced technologies that could upgrade its own submarine systems, missile programs, and anti-aircraft capabilities. All of which would explain how North Korea, a country under heavy sanctions and economic strain, has suddenly started launching advanced warships. And in 2024, the partnership peaked. In June of 2024, Russian President Vladimir Putin and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un signed a sweeping new agreement, pledging mutual aid if either country faces quote-unquote aggression. This means that if either country is attacked, the other is obligated to provide immediate military and other assistance by all means available. While the full details weren't made public, both leaders described it as a major upgrade, possibly the strongest connection between Moscow and Pyongyang since the Cold War. This agreement covers everything from security and trade to investment, cultural, and humanitarian ties. But the timing and the context speaks volumes. Putin's visit to Pyongyang, his first in 24 years, came as the West grew increasingly concerned about an arms for aid agreement. North Korea supplying Russia with badly needed munitions and, in return, getting economic support and advanced military technology. Technology that could further boost Kim's nuclear and missile programs. During the summit, Kim called the relationship a fiery friendship and referred to the agreement as their strongest ever treaty, putting Russia and North Korea on the level of a formal alliance. He openly pledged full support for Russia's war in Ukraine. Putin, on his part, described the agreement as a breakthrough document, a sign that both nations want to push their relationship to a new strategic level, one built not just on shared interests, but on shared enemies. But the reality is, one thing can destroy all this might and power North Korea has amassed. The numbers may look intimidating, but when it comes to real combat, experience is everything. That's exactly where North Korea falls short. Its troops and gear remain largely untested in modern warfare. The few glimpses the world has seen from their presence in Ukraine paint a rather embarrassing picture. According to reports, North Korean units were so poorly trained and confused that they ended up mistakenly firing on Russian forces instead of Ukrainian troops. But it's not just about their soldiers. Even their equipment is questionable, and the reason is the way they are engineered and manufactured. The perfect example is the latest incident, or rather the lesser-known embarrassing side, that has been exposed. To really understand what happened with the Kangkon, we need to look at the bigger picture of North Korea's shipbuilding program. Because this failed launch wasn't just about one ship tipping over. It was a sign of something much deeper, a rushed and risky approach to military development. Over the past few years, North Korea has been trying hard to modernize its military, and one area they've been pushing aggressively is their navy. As we mentioned in the beginning, for decades, North Korea's naval fleet has been made up of aging, outdated ships, mostly based on old Soviet designs from the 1950s and 60s. These ships aren't exactly known for high performance. They're slow, lightly armed, and easy targets for modern navies like those of South Korea or the United States. So, to close that gap, North Korea began building a new class of destroyer, the Chaehyun class. These are meant to be big, modern-looking, and equipped with the kind of systems you'd expect from advanced navies. The Kangkon was the second ship in this class after the first one, Chohyun, was launched in 2023. Now, on the surface, the Chohyun class looks impressive. The ships are around 5,000 tons, and that's big enough to be taken seriously. They feature a modern-looking radar tower, what appears to be vertical launch missile cells, and stealth-inspired angles in the whole design. But appearance doesn't always equal performance. While the ships may look modern from the outside, insiders and satellite analysts have raised serious doubts about what's actually inside of them, especially when you consider how quickly they've been built. So how did North Korea manage to build it so quickly? Satellite photos showed signs of rushed welding, uneven paneling on the hull, and even inconsistent paintwork. Some experts believe that the internal systems like radar, sonar, and missile electronics are likely either unfinished or completely untested at the time of launch. Even the overall balance of the ship seemed to be off. During the launch, the stern slid into the water first, while the bow remained stuck on the ramp, a sign that weight distribution wasn't calculated properly. This isn't just a small error for a ship this large. Getting the balance wrong can lead to exactly what happened. And this isn't just speculation. South Korea's military officially stated that the ship was seen lying on its side in the water. The US-based Center for Strategic and International Studies, the CSIS, after analyzing satellite imagery, explained that the ship wasn't properly supported, and as it moved, it twisted sideways, half in the water, half still stuck on land. And there's another key point. The Chongqing shipyard, where this launch took place, is not a military shipyard. It has historically produced cargo and fishing vessels, not warships. According to CSIS, the shipyard lacks significant expertise when it comes to handling the complexities of launching larger destroyers like the Kangkon. To hide such failures, the authorities detained 3 shipyard officials over the failed launch, because it wasn't even their mistake completely. YouTube just dropped a mind-boggling announcement. It is paying creators $64 million per day. Why? Well, because YouTube doesn't have enough creators. That is why you see videos on your homepage that have less than 1,000 views, like this one. Now, of course, that doesn't mean everyone should start a channel, but if you've ever wondered about starting a YouTube channel or a faceless channel, now's kind of the perfect time. YouTube is paying creators millions every day, and it's pushing newer, smaller channels now more than ever. But I'm sure you have many questions on how to get started and grow a channel. We get questions in our email all the time from some of you guys. And that's why we've decided to put all of our YouTube advice into one YouTube video for completely free. So, if you are someone who's interested in starting your own YouTube channel, you can watch that video here on YouTube by clicking on the link in the description or the card on your screen. Why would North Korea rush something so important? The answer lies in how the regime works. Kim Jong-un often sets extremely ambitious deadlines for military projects, not just to speed up development, but also to use these milestones as propaganda victories. The new ship launch was a propaganda photo shoot in disguise. A missile test becomes a celebration. It's less about whether the system works perfectly, and more about whether they can be shown off in time for key events, like military parades or party anniversaries. North Korea has followed a similar playbook with missiles, drones, and even satellite launches, rushing development, skipping critical testing phases, and pushing projects through just to meet deadlines. But North Korea didn't stop. After the failed launch of the Kangkon, the immediate priority for North Korea was damage control, not just fixing the ship, but also controlling the narrative. As soon as the ship capsized, the area around the Chongqing shipyard went into lockdown. Military guards were placed around the site, and it was as if the launch never happened. So North Korea began what can only be described as an emergency salvage mission, and they didn't have the luxury of time. Just a few days after the disaster, movement around the shipyard increased. Satellite tracking showed cranes, cables, and large equipment being brought in. But what really surprised analysts was how North Korea chose to lift the ship. North Korea has deployed dozens of huge white balloons alongside its wrecked warship to stop it from sinking further after the botched launch. The images showed the balloons surrounding the partially submerged vessel, which is tipped on its side. The warship was also covered in large blue tarps, likely an attempt to hide what has turned out to be an embarrassing failure for Kim Jong-un. While the exact purpose of the balloons isn't entirely clear, experts believe that they are being used to either stabilize or quickly repair the vessel. Based on their shape and visible tail fins, analysts suggest that the white blobs represent aerostat aircraft, similar to blimps, which rely on lifting gas to float in air or water. It looks like what appears to be balloons have been installed not to refloat the ship, but to prevent the ship from further flooding, said Representative Yu Yong-won, a South Korean lawmaker and military analyst, in an interview with CNN. The process took several days, maybe even weeks, but slowly the Kangkon began to rise back into a vertical position. By early June, the ship was quietly moved from Cheongjin to another facility, Nyajin Shipyard, further up the northeastern coast. This was likely done to get the ship away from the site of the failure and continue repairs in a more controlled environment. Again, no official word was released, but satellite footage clearly showed the Kangkon docked in Najin undergoing restoration. But this was still not good news for the regime. While we don't have direct access, analysts believe the electrical and electronic systems were probably the worst hit. When a ship like this capsizes and partially submerges, water can flood into compartments that weren't fully sealed. Sensitive systems like radar, mission control units, navigation gear, and communication equipment are extremely vulnerable. Salt water especially can cause corrosion within days. So even if the hull looked intact from the outside, the inside was likely a different story. There were also visible signs of scrapes and structural damage along the starboard side, the part that had hit the water and the slipway during the launch. It's possible that some of the external weapon mounts, antenna systems, or even parts of the hull had to be replaced or patched up. Despite all of this, on June 12th, less than a month after the failure, North Korea held what appeared to be a relaunch ceremony. Kim Jong-un was once again present, this time in Najin, and this time the launch went as planned. Photos showed him smiling, inspecting the ship, and saluting the Navy officers on board. The message was clear. The problem had been fixed, and the Kangkon was back on track. But outside observers, they weren't convinced. From the outside, yes, the ship had been uprighted, repaired, and relaunched. But the bigger question was, is it actually combat ready? No one has seen the ship perform any real sea trials yet. There's been no evidence of it sailing in open water, no footage of radar tests, missile launches, or even basic maneuvers. And that's a big ol' red flag. Naval experts point out that once a warship's internal systems have been compromised by water, especially salt water, it's almost impossible to restore them without fully replacing huge sections of the ship. And that requires both time and advanced equipment, things North Korea may not have easy access to. So while the Kangkon may now look fixed, it could still be far from operational. Meanwhile, signs suggest that North Korea is already moving ahead with plans to build more warships, likely another Chaehyun-class destroyer at both the Cheongjin shipyard and a second location at Nyeonpo. During the commissioning ceremony of the first destroyer, Kim Jong-un made it clear that this was just the beginning. He declared, "We will, of course, build warships of this class next year too. We will execute this plan of building multi-mission destroyers year by year." And you know who's gonna suffer? It's the engineers and the scientists. In most countries, a failed warship launch would be treated as a technical setback. An investigation would be launched, maybe some charges in the engineering team, and then things would move quietly forward. But North Korea is not like most countries. In this regime, mistakes, especially public ones, are treated as serious crimes, and someone always has to pay the price. He made it clear that those at fault, including senior figures from the Department of Munitions Industry of the Party Central Committee, the Institute of Dynamics of the State Academy of Sciences, Kimchek University of Technology, the Central Ship Design Institute, and Cheongjin Shipyard, would face severe consequences. Within days, reports began to surface that several high-ranking officials connected to the ship's design, construction, and launch had either been arrested, dismissed, or had simply disappeared from public view. One of the first names to be mentioned was Hong Kil-ho, the head of the Cheongjin shipyard. He had been a key figure in North Korea's recent naval expansion and was summoned by the authorities. Another major figure was Vice Admiral Kim Myung-sik, one of the top naval commanders in the country. He had previously appeared in the state media and photographs, often standing next to Kim Jong-un during inspections and events. But after the failed launch, his name vanished from official reports. Observers noted that he was even edited out of recent photos. Now, in a country like North Korea, when someone disappears from state media, it's usually not a good sign. It doesn't always mean they've been executed, but it often means that they've been purged, removed from their position, sent to labor camps, or held in prison. The regime rarely announces these actions publicly, but over time, patterns emerge. People are simply erased from public life, and their names are never mentioned again. And that's exactly what seems to have happened here. This kind of harsh punishment isn't new for North Korea. In fact, it follows a long-standing pattern. Whenever a major military project fails or embarrasses the regime, senior officials are blamed, sometimes even executed, to show that mistakes will not be tolerated. For example, after the failed satellite launches in previous years, several aerospace scientists reportedly faced similar consequences. Also, following a failed missile test, it was reported that some of the engineers responsible were either jailed or removed from their posts. On the surface, it looks like a very strict and disciplined way to achieve goals. But in reality, it's the hidden insecurity of Kim Jong-un. At its core, it's about maintaining fear and discipline. In a system where power is concentrated in the hands of one man, any failure can be seen as a challenge to his authority. By punishing those responsible, Kim sends a clear message, not just to the military, but to the entire government. It's also a way of reassuring the public and the elite. By blaming careless individuals, Kim is protecting the image of the regime itself. The failure wasn't the result of flawed policy or poor planning, it was because a few people didn't follow orders properly. This allows the system to stay intact, while those at the top shift the blame downward. Now, to understand why the sinking of the warship was so embarrassing, we need to first look at what the Kongkon was supposed to represent. It was meant to show the world that North Korea's Navy wasn't stuck in the past anymore, that it had the tools, the technology, and the ambition to compete with modern powers. One of the main goals of building ships like the Kongkon is to intimidate North Korea's rivals, especially South Korea, Japan, and the US. By showing off large, advanced-looking warships, North Korea hopes to project strength and keep its enemies guessing. A new destroyer creates doubt. It makes other countries ask, what is North Korea really capable of? That uncertainty is part of its defense strategy. But sometimes reality gets exposed in front of everyone. So, the failed launch raised serious questions about the quality of North Korea's military buildup. If one of their most important new warships couldn't even be launched properly, what does that say about the rest of their navy? Their missiles, their tanks, their submarines? Suddenly, what was supposed to be a symbol of power started to look more like a hollow display, all for show, but lacking real strength underneath. As we said, defense experts in South Korea and the US quickly picked up on this. Several analysts pointed out that while North Korea's military has grown in size, many of its new systems may be rushed, untested, or even non-functional. And for Kim Jong-un, that kind of reputation is dangerous. In a country like North Korea, the regime's power is partially built on fear, but also on perception. If the people start to doubt the military strength, or worse, if the elites and the army itself begin to question the leadership's judgment, it can shake the foundation of control. And as we saw, there's been no footage of the Kongkon sailing, no signs of real sea trials, and no updates about weapons tests or radar performance. It's possible the ship is still not fully operational and may not be for a long time. Still, even if the ships by North Korea with the help of the Russians aren't fully functional, their presence alone shifts the balance in the region. As analysts like Victor Cha have noted, the mere possibility of nuclear-capable North Korean destroyer forces, South Korea and the US might need to rethink their military posture. They need to spend more, plan more, and prepare for what might be coming. This is why North Korea can't afford public failure. In such a tightly controlled regime, even a single mistake on launch day becomes a threat to that illusion of total control. That's why mistakes like this aren't just technical failures, they are massive political risks. So, North Korea looks strong, but the reality is already in front of the world.